Welcome everyone to the Lord of Mysteries novel summary series on AniMonolith. In the previous part, Klein and his team of Beyonders, including Captain Dunn Smith, Leonard, Old Neil, and Fry, investigate the scene of a mysterious death in the same apartment where the kidnappers had detained Elliot. They find the decayed body of an elderly woman, Mrs. Katie Stephanie Bieber, with no clear cause of death, prompting further investigation. Using their mystical abilities, Klein and Old Neil confirm that an invisible force likely sealed the room, hinting at ritual magic. Fry determines the woman had been dead for more than 5 days, and it is discovered that her son, Ray Bieber, is missing. Klein and Dunn suspect that Ray may have the Antigonus family's notebook. Dunn orders the local police officer to search for a portrait of Ray to aid in the investigation. The team continues to explore the strange circumstances surrounding the death, and the missing son becomes a central focus of the case. As soon as the police officer left, Dunn immediately assigned Old Neil the task of putting all the residents living in this apartment building to sleep, and then finding the portrait of Ray Bieber through his sleep. Their dream was because Dunn did not trust the painted pictures. As soon as he was assigned the responsibility, Old Neil immediately took a bottle the size of a few thumbs from the hidden pocket on his classic black robe and splashed the black liquid in the bottle in 4 directions. Right after that, Neil spread some chalk around his body. Then Klein felt that an invisible ring of energy appeared around Old Neil's body, separating him from everyone and everything around him, similar to the state of this room at the beginning. After many very mysterious operations, Old Neil suddenly opened his eyes and quickly picked up the fountain pen he always carried with him. Then, he drew on the paper with extremely fast movements. Klein looked intently at the content of the painting and saw a face with a high-nose bridge and deeply concave eye sockets quickly appearing. After finishing drawing the short, naturally curly hair, Old Neil wrote a line below the picture: black hair, dark blue eyes, on the left side of the mouth there is a porcelain tooth. Then Neil concluded that this was a portrait of Ray Bieber when he was still in this room. After Old Neil finished, it was Klein's turn. He used his stick divination ability to search for Ray Bieber's whereabouts, but the stick did not point in a fixed direction like when searching for Elliot. On the contrary, it kept standing upright even without anyone holding it. At the same time, it kept spinning as if it had lost direction. Then Klein shook his head, thinking that some mysterious power was disturbing his divination ability. Faced with this situation, Captain Dunn did not discuss anything but quickly made a decision: Old Neil and Klein should take this portrait and ask the residents in the apartment complex. When all the neighbors confirmed that the person in the painting was indeed Ray Bieber, Dunn ordered Leonard and the police officer to go to the police station to complete the formalities, and he and Fry went to the bars in Tingen to find people through an unpublicized route. As for Old Neil and Klein, the horse-drawn carriage returned to Blackthorn Security Company. When they arrived, it was nearly 8 p.m. Klein then honestly asked Old Neil to comment on why he had previously, i.e. the original Klein, brought the diary of the Antigonus clan to Ray Bieber. Facing Klein's question, Old Neil seriously answered as follows: perhaps you and 2 friends in the research team touched the strength in the diary, or did some described ritual out of curiosity and ended up provoking a strange existence that you should not know. The motive of this existence was to have the notebook sent to Ray Bieber and sever all clues, to prevent anyone from discovering it. Therefore, apart from you who were selected, Welch and Naya committed suicide. Regarding Klein, no one knows why he is still alive. Old Neil also offers some hypotheses that maybe Ray Bieber is one of the last remaining descendants of the Antigonus family, or perhaps Ray Bieber's destiny was compatible with the notebook requirements. In short, there are too many possibilities. And why the notebook was sold to Tingen City would have similar reasons. After hearing Old Neil's speculation, Klein could not help but exclaim in regret, because if he had been more sensitive, during the mission with Leonard, he could have found Ray Bieber and detected the notebook of the Antigonus family. Contrary to Klein, Old Neil believes that this is not that troublesome. The person who needs to worry is Captain Dunn, not Klein. Hearing that, Klein was extremely surprised, so Neil honestly explained, I think that the thing, or the mysterious power that created all of this, will no longer pay attention to you. It's just like how you would not pay attention to the ants on the ground, so even if he happened to survive, it wouldn't have much of an effect on their work. I think you just need to not let that pay attention to you and everything will be fine. Besides, the Nighthawks' search for Ray Bieber will quickly become known to the Secret Order. Surely they can guess that this is related to the whereabouts of the Antigonus family notebook, so they will have to search for Ray first. So they won't focus on following you or endangering you anymore. Klein. After old Neil finished his extremely logical speculation, Klein suddenly felt his soul become lighter and hoped that everything would be as Neil had just said. However, in Klein's heart, there was still a fear that was difficult to erase. Because he believes that participating in the mission to rescue Elliot and then finding the whereabouts of the lost notebook is not a coincidence. The worst case that Klein could think of was that one unknown day, a postman suddenly appeared and gave Klein a package. When Klein opens it, the Antigonos family's notebook will be inside. Just thinking about it made Klein extremely panicked. Seeming to see through Klein's worried thoughts, old Neil tried to make him more excited by reminding him to practice the gesture of praising the goddess and asking the goddess to bless him. At the same time, Neil did not forget to mention that Klein doesn't look like a fervent believer at all. Hearing that, Klein immediately objected that old Neil also did not have the appearance of a devotee of the goddess. The happy conversation between the two was the result of their close time studying mysticism. At that moment, someone suddenly opened the company's door. It turned out to be Lady Oriana. After a greeting with two contrasting nuances with old Neil and Klein, because Neil was not subtle enough to touch on the issue of women's age, and Klein was smart enough to praise women, Lady Oriana also mentioned today's main topic, which was the issue of Klein's bonus. She briefly announced that Butler Klee has paid the remuneration for the entrusted duty. According to the captain's regulations, half is included in the out-of-norm budget, half to Klein and Leonard. However, because Klein is not an official team member, he only receives 10% of the £200 salary, and he can come to the office later to sign to receive the money. Besides, Oriana did not forget to recreate the extremely surprised scene of Butler Klee when he came to give money to the company. After finishing his conversation with Oriana, Klein turned to chat with old Neil. Neil then congratulated Klein on the generous bonus he had just received. However, when he saw Klein's regretful that he had not yet become an official staff member of the Nighthawks, so he could not receive his full salary, old Neil was extremely surprised because, as he remembered, from before up to now, the Blackthorn Company rarely received commissions, but occasionally when they did, the fee was less than £20. So old Neil told Klein that the next time there was a commission mission, remember to let him know. Faced with old Neil's eagerness, Klein frankly asked about the salary that Neil received because he felt that Neil seemed very short of money. However, when he heard that the weekly salary old Neil received was £12, Klein was extremely surprised because if calculated by year, the salary of a Beyonder was only slightly lower than the salary of a senior lawyer must work very hard to achieve. Not only that, old Neil also revealed that the Beyonder's job is not taxable, so the salary received is a lot. Hearing about taxes, Klein suddenly remembered that Benson had mentioned that those whose weekly salary is £1 or more must pay Type E tax, which is also the salary income tax of employees working for the government and companies. From £1 to £2 pay 3%, from £2 to £5 pay 5%, £5 to £10 pay 10%, £10 to £20 pay 15%, and from £20 or more pay 20%. Besides, Klein also read information about 4 other types of income taxes. Type A is profit tax on land, housing, and other value-added assets, including land tax and house tax. Type B is income tax for agriculture. Type C is the capital gains tax for bonds, treasuries and stocks. Type D is the income tax of commerce, finance, and other specialized manufacturing industries. After summarizing his knowledge of taxes in this world and thinking about the salary and tax-free benefits that the Beyonder received, Klein could not help but admire how extremely prestigious this job was. However, old Neil believes that although the salary is high, it is not enough to spend on collecting extraordinary items for research, study, or battle purposes. Hearing that, Klein was very surprised because he had previously been reminded by Neil that items could be written to Captain Dunn for approval. In response to Klein's question, old Neil explained that there is only a certain limit, and sometimes there must be a very good reason for it to be approved. So if you want to practice more in the mystical field, you can only spend your own money to buy extraordinary items through relationships or through the black market. When he heard that it was possible to buy non-worldly objects on the black market, Klein was extremely surprised because he thought that the Church of Evernight Goddess strictly prohibited the existence of non-worldly objects except those within their control. Hearing this, old Neil was forced to explain in detail to Klein. From a mystical point of view, everything has a soul, everything has a common origin. The materials we use do not only come from supernatural species, but also from ordinary animals, plants, and minerals. For example, poisonous violets, peppermint and nightshade in the potion seer are things that can be encountered frequently in everyday life. Perhaps they do not have supernatural properties, but have its own characteristics. After preparing and mixing them together, it will achieve a certain effect. Therefore, these are transactions that the church cannot ban if it wants to ban them. Before Klein could react, Old Neil continued to explain more clearly, it is not the most essential parts of the supernatural species that can be used. For example, the lava octopus, in addition to its blood and eyes, its skin and tentacles are all materials. Unless the church orders all of its people to capture them, if it doesn't have to be fully stocked and control the amount of items smuggled to other places, that's a pretty big economic burden. The lower the level of extraordinary materials, the more so, we can only try to keep things that seem special from being put into circulation. In short, Old Neil concluded that as long as the transaction was not too ostentatious or the non-human item being traded was not on the blacklist, churches would not pay too much attention. At the same time, Neil also believes that trading in the black market will help beyonders find the necessary materials as well as investigate clues of the mysterious organizations that are in charge of the transactions. So in some ways, this is completely beneficial for churches. Then Klein asked Old Neil to arrange a convenient time to take him to the black market. However, Neil seemed hesitant because he still had an unpaid debt on the black market. Seeing Neil's situation, Klein generously offered to lend him money, but Neil refused. Then Neil asked Klein to review his knowledge of history while he himself would rest after a hard day's work. Klein then politely said goodbye to Neil and left. Then that afternoon, when Dunn still hadn't returned from his mission to investigate the whereabouts of the missing notebook, Klein left the company and quickly headed to the divination club in the area near Welch's house. Because he now has enough money to become an official member.